Hey, all, I just wanted to sneak in here and give you a quick announcement. July 29th, live stream on YouTube at 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Just go to YouTube, search for CommScope Ruckus Education. The live stream event will pop up right there. We'd love to have you answer all your questions and show you some cool things that we're doing. All right, take it away, Brian.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Ruckcast. Ruckcast is your opportunity to listen in on unscripted conversations about cutting-edge Ruckus Wi-Fi and wired networking technology, Ruckus business, and just interesting innovations that impact the computer networking industry today and in the future. Ruckcast is brought to you directly from CommScope Ruckus Education. For more learning opportunities, be sure to log on to training.ruckuswireless.com and view content on our Ruckus Education YouTube channel. Simply search for Ruckus Education on your YouTube homepage. Without further ado, here's your host, Matt Clouda.
Hubie, thanks for coming on the podcast, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
So do me a favor, just for everybody, do you mind introducing yourself and telling us a little bit more about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, sure. I'm Hubie Vickers. Right now I'm the manager of the Product Solutions Group. I've been in the company 8 years, coming around 8 years. Will be next March, so 7.5 years. I actually came in the carrier side. They hired me for Aris and worked, because I'm local here in Georgia, about 20 minutes from the Aris headquarters, the original Aris headquarters. And when they made some changes, when the SmartZone platform came out, they actually moved me over to Enterprise and got involved in MDU and some of the specialized stuff that we do. Worked a lot with managed service providers. And about 2 years ago, Jeanette asked me to come over to this side of the house, to Product Solutions, and took the team over about 2 months ago. And really have been working on getting a lot of new structure built inside of this group. So I've kind of changed a lot. I've moved around a lot. Kind of, I guess I'm keeping in line with all of the mergers and acquisitions. I was moving around a lot as well.
It makes putting your job roles on paper difficult.
Yeah, it does. And sometimes I forget what I'm doing from week to week.
Oh, yeah, I'm with you there. Hey, so when you got involved in SmartZone, which was, boy, what version was it when you came over and started to work on that?
Well, when I first came in was when it was the SCG, Smart Cell Gateway for the carrier systems, and we didn't even have a manual or a training program when I came in. It was just we were doing a lot of stuff by the seat of our pants, because it was really, we were just really building up that carrier practice. And when they created the VSCG, the virtual Smart Cell Gateway, I was very interested in that, because the old SCG, if you brought that into your house and put it into a lab, it sounded like an F-16 taking off. The first time I powered one up in my lab here, I had people walking back going, people in my family walking back going, "What is that?" Because it's really loud. It wasn't practical. The thing's huge. And so I got interested in the VSCG due to the fact that I could put it in my lab, because I was doing a lot of remote support, for small and large carriers. I mean, we had everybody from Charter to Cox down to, just little small mom and pop, MSPs and carriers and things like that. And so, I got pretty good with it. The company decided to, when the SmartZone platform first really came out, it was the VSCG being ported over as an enterprise product. So the virtual controller was going to move over, and it was so different than the zone director that, a lot of the SC community over on the enterprise side, they just never had any exposure to it. So one, they wanted me to come over and help out, with that transition for anybody that needed help over here. But the East Coast team that I was working on at the time was really interested in pushing into managed service providers. And we did immediately. As soon as I joined that team, we started going after these managed service providers. And we, a whole bunch of them, they're still around today, is stuff that we worked on years ago. I guess that would have been about 6 years ago, 7, somewhere around there. And, then we've got now what we have today with the VSZ and SmartZone platform. They started adding, we added in just massive amount of enterprise class features. And so it's really kind of how I came over this side from the carrier. But, I think my first version was like 1.0.4.1 build 3, something like that. I've still got it somewhere, but it's a very old one, and I've brought it back up a couple of times. And when you look at the stuff you got today and you look at that one, it's like there's like 2 or 3 tabs on that one, and then the stuff that we've got today is so much more mature than what we had back then. I've been doing it a while.
It's funny, you really try very hard in this industry to not compare your, like, how long in the tooth you are to software versions that you've seen the first iteration of and now where you're at today, because otherwise it'll make you feel really ancient really fast.
Yeah. I do that every morning when I look in the mirror. So
I'm with you. So when you look at, I think one of the really cool things about VSZ especially is, and I'm sure that you've seen a customer's appetite for this just simply on the fact that there's not a hardware requirement or a hardware purchase behind it because of the virtualization piece of it, which I'm a huge fan of. I mean, you can stand this thing up on a pretty minimal system, especially with how server hardware is now. You can spin one up in a VM environment. And we've done a lot of how-to content on how to do that in every single platform. I mean, you have Google Cloud and you have Azure and all of these different cloud providers, AWS, things like that. But now you look at, you talk about version 1.0.4 or however long ago that was. And now you go into versions 5.x, and not only do you have a VSZ installation, but now you have VDP and things like that, where I think that really ties into some of the enterprise level of products that you're talking about, right?
Yeah. It's the data plane, especially in some deployments, some of the deployments that I did, is really separating that out. Of course, the data plane was built in on the old SCG, and being able to separate that out and tunnel that traffic to pretty much anywhere you want. It's really the product's really matured. There's some very interesting deployments that I worked on that people are doing. They're doing a lot of different things with it. The thing I always liked about it, and still like about it, is the flexibility. There's just a lot of stuff especially in the -H high scale. There's just a lot of things that you can do. There's from anything from small school district all the way up to we got a hospital system here in Atlanta that's got 4 or 5 different campuses and multiple Wi-Fi telephone systems. They got Polycom plus some Cisco stuff and tablets and phones, and they're just doing all kind of stuff. And a lot of the infrastructure that they've built out, it relies a lot on the data plane, and they're doing some really neat stuff. And the management is so much more simple. That's a complex network, but the way I always tried to approach everything when we were selling this, and the way that I would always try to put myself in the seat of the person that had to come in every day and deal with a network at that size. How would I, how do you build this? How do you suggest, what suggestions do you make to this customer to make their life happier, to make it more simple, so they're not wasting time. Especially in sales, any of the guys that are out there, if you got these guys where they're moving along efficiently and they're not spending a whole lot of time, trying to keep the network up and running. One, they're happier. 2, they also start looking at other projects, so you can actually, get them into some more gear, and expand out your customer base, expand out the deployment. So that's one of the main things I always loved about it. It's the SmartZone, especially the VSZ. It's really flexible what you can do with it. And I've deployed that thing, like I said, from a really small school district to really, really, really large networks all the way across the country with multiple data centers. So it's a really neat product.
It really is. And I know I've probably beat this horse to death on the podcast, but I come from a routing switching background, right? So when I was first dropped in front of a SmartZone application, the thing I liked about it the most, and I've had, I've had exposure and experience with other wireless platforms, and I'm not going to drag anybody's name through the mud, but they were challenging in the fact that when you sit down in front of a SmartZone, you understand it really fast. Like, it tells a story and it's easy to navigate, and you don't look at it from, this is going to be a management nightmare. You know what I mean? And now the more and more I work with it, it works really well. It's really smooth. And I think you just hit something really key on the head as we talk about, making feature rich applications and really putting stuff together. But a lot of times, I don't think some people really dig into what is the care and feeding of this thing going to look like? Because at the end of the day, when you go through and you've got VPs and directors and managers making purchasing decisions, which they have their own reasons for doing that, there's still somebody at the end of the day that has to sit in front of that box and manage it. And how difficult is that care and feeding process? And, SmartZone to me is something that it doesn't really look like you're going to look at it every day and be like, oh my God, I have to deal with this thing again. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It really is. And I won't name anybody, but a couple of other competitors. I work for a very large integrator of the biggest competitor that we have, and they had a controller platform. It worked. They had an analytics platform. It worked. But it was this is one thing I noticed. So it's a good example, because right after I came over and I had been doing I was an implementation engineer. Where was that? So we were actually the ones that were putting the system in and doing the knowledge transfer to the customer. And there's pretty big customers. There was, thousands and thousands of access points. Some of them were multi-city. So it was big stuff. And, and doing their analytics engine as well. And when I would do a knowledge transfer to a customer, I knew I was going to be there at least a week and probably still engaged with that customer for a month, maybe 2 months after that, almost every day, calling and asking a question. And, and when I say a week, I mean literally a week of every day being with that customer, teaching them how to use that system. And when I came over and I started getting into, deployments, not only with the SCG back in the day, but especially when the virtual SmartZone and then the SmartZone 100 and everything later, when I was still in SC, when I was still in the field, one thing that really stuck out to me, it was how little time that I had to take to get that knowledge transfer done, so that the operator, customer, VAR, whoever on the other end that was going to be, managing that system, it was not taking me nearly the amount of time and the care and feeding after I had done that. So, it was just, that was just apples to apples when I was looking at it. It's just that it really does not take nearly the amount of time of what I've seen with our other competitors to become proficient with a SmartZone platform. And I think a lot of things, because I've started, I'm going to, start seeing internally, we're going to do some releases of the new cloud analytics. And there's things like that are, coming in that are going to pair up with the SmartZone and with the way that cloud analytics works, for a day-to-day operations. Again, this is me putting myself back in that person that's sitting behind the wheel driving this thing. When I look at that cloud analytics, the improvements we've made in SCI what the SmartZone can do today. I mean, really, if I were the person that was running, that network, I would be really happy. I just see a lot of things. I started educating myself with cloud analytics, and we've actually got the service provider team over at Aris is actually adding cloud analytics into their offering for their managed service offering. And it's starting to look at that on a larger scale. It's just really great. Troubleshooting, stuff like that. I mean, this product has matured so much from when I first started with it as to what we have today. It's amazing. So it's just, we've really done a good job keeping that focus on, again, what is the person that's actually got to live with this system after they've put it in? They got to get up every morning and come in with their cup of coffee and deal with, their network every day. And I think, we've done a really good job with that. It's a neat system.
The troubleshooting tools that are built into it alone, when I first started to see some of it, my mind was blown. I mean, the simple fact that you can take an access point and you can stream a packet capture out of it onto your local machine, and Wireshark is picking it up live. I mean, really? I mean, come on, man. That's some pretty cool stuff right there.
Yeah.
And so I just love it.
Yeah, well, and then you look at some of the other troubleshooting tools, because one of the things I used to run into was, you're going in, and even if it was just a branch of a new office, where you're putting in some access points, and they're on the same management platform, and I used to run into this all the time, and you would get to the person that's handling security and radius, and you have an issue, when you're trying to get a client on, and something's just not jiving with radius. User attribute doesn't match something. The radius guys, the security guys are always like, well, it works for everybody else. And I'm like, well, yeah, but it doesn't work for this guy sitting right next to this guy. What's something wrong with the wireless? And anybody, any of the SEs out there, if you get if you get the right DHCP address, on the right VLAN, it's usually something else. And some of those tools that they added in, where you can actually type the MAC address and have somebody try to authenticate it. And then it goes through and shows you where things break, and that's been that was a really cool tool, when it first came out. And I know I've talked to some people in the field. It's something that you can take and say, hey, it's not the wireless, and here's why. There's something going on in particular with this client, and the way that it's trying to negotiate with the radius server, it can be a lot of different things. So there's a lot of stuff like that. And I think that's another thing about the cloud analytics that I noticed is it takes that even further. That whole system is really set up for that day-to-day, finding that stuff. So we got a lot of tools. There's just a lot of stuff that with this system as it is today that really help with that day-to-day operation.
Yeah, the most fun that you're ever going to have in troubleshooting, and we teach this in some of the practical courses that we have on the wired side, is it's not necessarily fixing the issue. Sometimes it's proving that you're not the issue.
Yeah, it is. I know, and you don't. And sometimes, like I said, you're dealing with somebody that's like, well, everybody else works, and that person's probably got a million other problems that day, and you putting a couple of access points in a new branch and trying to get some clients on it is probably their way down on their list. But at least being able to tell them what it is, it's helpful.
Oh yeah, and that's the world we live in. I mean, on the network side, you're kind of stuck in the middle, right? If you have two applications that can't talk, well, the finger's going to get pointed at you immediately. So having the troubleshooting tools built into, I mean, ICXs have it. SmartZone has it. Access points have it. So anyway, last week we talked to Marcelo, and you can tell that guy loves APIs and he loves what he's doing, right?
Yes.
And I know you guys have been working a lot in lockstep. So what are some of the things? I mean, you have a storied history with SmartZone, but when you first kind of came into this and API started to get mentioned, what were some of the first light bulbs that were going off in your head saying, oh man, we could do this and we could do this and we could do that? What was that like?
Well, and again, this comes from when I was on the SC side. I would be people would be asking questions, customers about, when can we do, say, like Spot and this, to do things. And I would talk to the different line managers, and it's not just Spot; it's other things. They're like, well, we have these APIs, and we publish all the APIs. And one of the things that I started talking to Jeanette about this years ago. Because I've been friends with Jeanette pretty much since the day I met her when I came in the company. And we started, like, if we could get a single direction for all of the different product lines, as far as the way that we're handling our APIs, and if we could, get this more cataloged, and get some use cases and how to leverage these APIs to do things with other devices and different analytic tools and things like that. And before I even came on, we had started talking about this position, me coming in, and, what she wanted to restructure the team. Like, APIs was one of the number one focus that we wanted to have on this product solutions team. So that's hence, Marcelo coming in, which is, Marcelo, I'm not sure that he's not at least part cyborg / computer, because he's amazing. And the guy's got a great work ethic. I'm telling you, working with him is just, it's wonderful, and the stuff that he does. But, really, the focus is right now is just get everybody going in the right direction, all the product line, everybody going with the, kind of in lockstep with how we're handling the APIs. And also, we're looking at some things like an API orchestrator, and so that we've got a tool that as you're doing things with the APIs across ICX, any of the, SmartZone platform, Spot, anything that we're doing, we'll just have that single spot that you can manipulate that from. We're still developing that. There's a couple of different directions that we're going. But there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that he's doing in automation. He's actually, I don't know if he talked about it with you, he's got a product that's going to be up for patent that, does, it does a lot of really neat things. Can't talk a whole lot about it. But it's really just right now, we're just, and it's starting to happen. We're just getting everybody focused and going in the same direction with the APIs. And really just getting that down to, instead of saying, well, here's all the APIs, here's all these APIs that you can do, here's the whole list, here's the catalog. Not only to have that, but to have somewhere that you can have like a console that as you're working with that everything's done from a single position. There's something that's probably going to wind up being a product, I would assume, that we'll push out there to say, hey, this is how you, across our platform, and when you're interfacing with other things, this is something you can use. This is a tool that you can use, kind of keep everything in line, keep it in order. And there's also stuff that Marcelo's working with, because we also have the interop certification lab, which is one of the things that my team is responsible for. And Rodolfo runs that, but he and Marcelo work very close together, because there's a lot of API integration when we bring in companies like Palo Alto, Pulse Secure, whoever. There's a lot of things that that have to happen there, API wise, to make sure that that we're working together to get a full ecosystem interop certification done. So really, right now, a lot of what Marcelo's doing, he's doing a lot, is just getting us all in order, getting everything nice and orderly, and then we're working on how do we, for our customers and our partners, how do we best show them how to manage all of these APIs, from a single spot. I don't want to say the single pane of glass, because I think everybody's sick of hearing that, but I said it anyway. That's really the focus. And again, I mean, I got so lucky. Heather Williams and Jeanette, actually, Heather was running the team before. They recruited him. They brought him in. He came in, he was already an employee, but they brought in Marcelo, and then Rodolfo, who works in the the Interop Lab. It's a really dynamic team. The whole team is great, but especially from that API standpoint, there's some really cool things that are happening.
Well, that makes getting up and going to work every day really easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about the interop aspect a little bit last week, and I say a little bit. I mean, we talked about it, but it wasn't massively miles long, miles deep. And one of the things we kind of touched on was it's about playing nice in certain ways, but it's also about understanding that when you walk into a customer's environment, there's a 99.999% chance that they don't have one single vendor in that network, right? And it's in their best interest not to as well, a lot of times, because some vendors do some things, some vendors don't do some things, some do them better, some do them worse, right? So you do what's best for the environment you're dealing with. So it's not necessarily just about playing nice and working in the industry. It's about enabling them to reach the end goal or the means that they're after. And that's what a lot of this stuff really does. So from a networking aspect, I look at things like network automation comes up all the time, Ansible, things like that. And we have some of that functionality within our labs, right? I mean, education labs, you've got to flip those things over on a dime, reset them, get them stood up for the next day, the next session, the next class, whatever it might be. And we do utilize some of that. So having those abilities there is great. Having the challenge comes in where you now have to uplift and start to educate folks on, okay, I know ICX CLI inside and out. You can work that thing and make it do dances and tricks and everything else. But now you throw in this automation piece to it, and some guys are going to look at it and go, oh my goodness. You know what I mean? So that's where how bridging that gap becomes somewhat of a challenge in certain aspects. But have you seen that be a challenge, or has it been something that's really been embraced amongst the customer base and feedback you're getting, things like that? Is it pretty much open arms? Yeah, bring it on. Let's do it.
It depends on where you're at, because it's, you get some customers, if you even mention APIs, it just crickets. You get some that, they just give us your APIs, and you don't hear anything. You don't hear anything from them until you go out there and they're doing all this crazy stuff with your APIs, and then you got kind of in the middle, which is where some of these, the automation things and the ENMS stuff, which is the orchestrator that we're kind of looking at right now. That's where that comes in, because you're going to have some people at the high end. If you just, if you've got that list of APIs and, just some small guidance from you, small amount of guidance, they're going to take off. ENA up in Tennessee, which is an education partner that we have, they do all kind of stuff with our APIs, and they were one of my managed service providers when I was still over on the enterprise team. You don't hear anything out of them. You've got other ones that I won't name that they need a lot of help. I don't know, with a lot of the stuff that Marcel's doing with automating some of this and with getting this stuff so that it just makes it easier. You kind of hit that middle ground, but you can kind of go in both directions too. If you got people that start wanting to do things with APIs, I think that's really his focus. And it's, where I see this going is just to make this, like I said, make a product or a tool, that allows people, even if they might not be embracing, doing things with APIs today, make that so, you could go in and say, hey, look, this is some stuff that you can do. Here's some really cool tools to do it, and we've got all our ducks in a row. So here's everything, that you need. And it's really a focus, because there's just so much stuff, and you see, everybody's using APIs now. You see it, it doesn't matter which vendor you look at. If you go out and go on their websites, and if you're a partner and go to one of their partner portals, you're going to see all kind of stuff of surrounding API development. And it's a lot with the Interop Lab. That's there's a lot of things that are going on with that inside the Interop Lab. To make sure that one, we're already working before that even goes out the door. So if you got somebody that doesn't want to do anything with it, all that stuff's already working. So I think it's kind of three levels. You got some people are not going to do anything with it, period. Some people, I don't even know if they're even going to want a tool, because like I said, I've been in those shops and they've got a guy that's, or lady or whoever that's been doing API since they were, in the industry, and really don't want anything from it. But then you kind of got the middle. It's kind of what I'm seeing now.
Yeah. So I don't know if you're aware of this, but we've started doing live streams. So the education group, we started doing live streams and talking about this. This is something you and I need to have more discussion on, because I think the API aspect and everything that's going on, I think that's a great opportunity for us to go in and kind of showcase some of that stuff. So we'll have conversations about that in the future. And so there's questions I want to ask you, but they have nothing to do with APIs, and it probably has nothing to do with Ruckus. So is there anything else that you kind of want to include or add on just to get information out there about all of this stuff?
You're going to start seeing internally and externally, because I'm working on some documents for the interop certification. You start seeing a whole lot more out of that, as far as us advertising what we're doing internally and externally. And with that system's really just getting online. So just look for more. You're going to see a lot more out there. Yeah,
and I'd like to have you or Marcelo or both of you back when you get to that, because I know he also talked about there is some stuff coming, a month or two out, and so I think there's going to be a lot of updates and a lot of information to get out there. So you guys are obviously invited back. I'd like to talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah.
So okay, so if you're tuning into this to listen to APIs and you're going to be bored to death, because I'm going to ask Hubie about fishing, because if you're not an internal employee and you haven't seen his profile picture, he has got a massive fish there, and I'm a little bit jealous that you live in Georgia, because I know that there is some amazing bass fishing down there. And they don't get that big here. I'm in Colorado. They just don't get, 5 or 6 pounds maybe, but you're not going to get some of the toads coming out of the water you guys have. Do you bass fish down there much?
No, I don't do a lot of bass fishing. See, whereas you're jealous of me being in Georgia with a bass, I'm jealous of you being out there because I trout fish. I'm actually going, as soon as the whistle blows tomorrow evening, I'm heading up. I've got a friend of mine that we both served in the military together, and he has a piece of property that we've got about 400 yards of Little Skeena Creek that runs through there, and we've been managing that for about the last 5 years, really cleaning the creek up, putting a lot of fish food in there, getting the trout coming up in there, the rainbow trout. So we don't get, whereas we've got big bass and stuff here, we don't have the calcium deposits. We don't have the limestone that other places do, like in Colorado and things like that. So we don't really get the really big trout unless you work really hard at it.
Interesting.
Because we've done a lot of work. And we do catch and release, barbless hooks. It's just my friend, myself, and a few other people that we know that we even allow to come in and fish that. But I do a lot of that, and that's because I am 50 miles north of Atlanta. And just I'll be there tomorrow afternoon. It'll take me about 45 minutes, and I'm going to be way up in the mountains. So it's, a lot of creek and river fishing. I do some fly fishing.
That's awesome.
I like a lot of that.
Got to have a hobby. You have to. We work on this stuff day in and day out, and you put a lot of passion into what you do from the 9 to 5, and then it's perfectly fine to have a little bit of passion for what you do from the 5 to 9.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
That's awesome. Well, good luck. I hope you have tons of fish on and you guys kill it up there. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thank you.
You bet. Awesome. Well, Hubie, thank you. Like I said, I want to have you guys come back in and talk about, the interop stuff. And also I know Marcelo mentioned there's some other stuff coming too. So once there's more, publicly announceable information about some things.
Yeah.
I think we'll have you guys.
That'd be good. That'd be good. Yeah, we've got some stuff that's coming online. We're just baby steps right now.
Yep, I hear you. You gotta run before you crawl. or
Thank you for listening to Ruckcast. If you just found us for the first time, be sure to follow or subscribe on your platform of choice so you can be notified of future episodes.
Great.
All righty, man.
Awesome. Well, Hubie, thanks. We'll be in touch, and also we'll sit down. We'll talk about the live stream stuff too, because I think that's a great
contact us at ruckcast@comscope.com.
Cool. See you, man.
All right.
And
See you
as
later.
always,
Thanks
for listening.